The views and opinions expressed on this program are those of the participants and do not reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
BronxNet. Your voice, your views, your vision.
With Black History Month just concluding, the question remains, how far have we come? By way of civil rights, by way of racism in America? The questions that still remain unanswered. Professor Ed Colvert is our guest in studio. That's the topic of conversation on Perspectives with yours truly, Darren Jaime.
Relevant to life, you bring it to the table. Whether you make a move solo or a movement with a stable. No fables to speak on your decisions, cause in the long run it's your voice, your views, your vision. Keeping it real with many messages for you to know. This ain't radio, but DJ runs the show. Entertainment, he rocks it. Politics, he locks it. The host with the most would handle any topic. Don't forget to share your perspective which shines a light, cause it might make a difference in someone else's life. What's your perspective?
And hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Perspectives. I'm Darren Jaime. We invite you to stay connected to Perspectives. Check us out on the web, www.bronxnet.org/perspectives. And, of course, hit us up on our Facebook and Twitter pages and let us know what you think. Share your perspective. And, of course, if you can and you want to, let us know what kind of show you want to see. And maybe we'll have a future show dedicated to your perspective. But coming up on this edition of Perspectives, we recap with Black History Month coming to an end. The question is, where do things stand with us in regards to civil rights? We know about the Trayvon Martin case, the Michael Dunn case. Now the question is, where are we? Please be joined by Professor Ed Colvert, professor at Lehman College, and also the editor-in-chief of the Colvert Chronicles. And Professor Colvert, good to have you.
It's my pleasure.
Well, let me start off with this right now. Most recently, America takes a front and center look at the trial of Michael Dunn in the shooting of Jordan Davis. You also have the Trayvon Martin shooting. And as a person who walked in the civil rights movement, and you see these cases and you see these verdicts, what's your perspective?
My perspective is simply this, that things have changed immensely, but there's still room for improvement. The Dunn situation and the Trayvon Martin situation were heinous. People who commit these crimes, and they are crimes, they have very myopic thinking, because nowadays via iPad, iPhone, the visual media, the world can see what's going on in America. You cannot hide injustice in your house and yet want to go to Afghanistan and Iraq and talk about injustice over there. First, clean your own house. With the Trayvon Martin situation, the assassin was given specific instructions by the police department, do not engage. Mm-hmm. He obeyed a direct order from a superior. Disobeyed a direct order from a superior. In any situation, those were grounds for dismissal from the job, or if he were in the Army, that would be grounds for him to be shot on the spot. People feel that they can take the law into their own hands and can do whatever they want to do and get away with it, because we do not follow through and dot the I's and cross the T's so that these things will never happen again.
Let me ask the question. You were very instrumental in hanging around the civil rights movement, marched at the March on Washington, marched in those civil rights causes. If Dr. Martin Luther King were around today, and you had the case of Trayvon Martin, and you had the case of Jordan Davis, what do you think Dr. King's reaction would be?
First of all, I don't think he would be marching. What I think he would be doing, I think he would be registering people to vote, so that when time came to vote, you could vote the people into office that would do the will of the people and do those things to protect people. In fact, if you look on the side of the police car, it says protect and serve. It didn't say to shoot and kill. And I understand about stand your ground, but there are ways of standing your ground. The Bible says that soft words turn away wrath. There should have been no confrontation if the man who was the assassin had been any kind of a godly man. There would have been no confrontation whatsoever, because he would have obeyed the law, which is not only what Jesus said, but it's what Malcolm X said. Malcolm X didn't say do anything, but obey the law. Had he obeyed the law and did what his superiors told him to do, there would have been no problems. The civil rights movement has become the pork barrel of so many people. It's very difficult to talk about the civil rights movement and the March on Washington without hurting somebody. If you want me to tell you the truth, I will tell you the truth, and I will tell you where you can go read it for yourself. Exactly what I say. Mm-hmm. First of all, there are two people that were involved in the civil rights movement that were completely overshadowed by men. Those people were one, Dr. Anna Hedgeman and Dorothy Height. They were the driving force behind the scenes of the civil rights movement. Not the NAACP, not the Urban League. The March on Washington, first of all, there were 3 different marches. There was one in 41 that was going to be attempted. There was another one in 44, and then the other one was in 63. In 63, A. Philip Randolph, who was head of the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters, whose office was on 125th Street in Harlem, decided to have a march on Washington. He called with him L. Joseph Overton, and he called Baird Rustin, he called Dr. Jameson, and he called numerous other people who have all passed away now. There are 2 of us left. The 2 of us are Leon Harris from RWDSU, who's retired in Florida, and Ed Culvert, who is here at Lehman College. There was nobody else there that is alive today. Now, you'd say, well, I've never heard this before. Well, I'm going to give you the book that you can read that will tell you exactly what I say. The name of that book is The March on Washington by William P. Jones. It will tell you exactly what I say. You see, when something is successful, everybody wants to be a part of it. But in the formulation of a thing, nobody wants to take the risk of going out there and looking bad. Nothing ventured, nothing gained.
So when you say that you were a part of the March on Washington...
A gopher.
You were a gopher.
Go for this, go for that. Leon and I. We didn't set policy. I'm not going to tell that lie. We didn't set policy. But to be able to sit there and see how these people did things and how they negated the importance of women, and indeed did negate the women, that's criminal.
So when you talk about a person like Dr. Dorothy Height...
Dr. Dorothy Height.
Who will go down in history.
Yes, indeed.
But she doesn't get the full compliment.
She does not get the full compliment of what she did to make the March on Washington what it was.
What exactly did she do, the 2 ladies that you left out? I mean,
Dr. Anna Hedgeman, who worked, if I remember correctly, worked many years for the YWCA, and was a commissioner for the city of New York. Dorothy Height, Black Business and Professional Women, they were the ones who got the grassroots stuff together. They did all the dirty work. If you look at the stationery, you'll find that Dorothy Height's name is not mentioned, but you'll find Dr. Anna Hedgeman's name is mentioned along with some of the other stars. In the beginning, Roy Wilkins was not there. He did not come aboard until things started to move, and he wanted to have the meetings moved from Asa Randolph's office on 125th Street to his office in Midtown. Whitney Young did not come aboard in the early stages until he found out that that was going to fly, and then he wanted to come in and come aboard. That was strictly A. Philip Randolph, L. Joseph Overton, Anna Hedgeman, and later on, Dorothy Height.
Amazing.
Now, there's another fella who most people who have forgotten. His name is Simeon Booker. Simeon Booker was a journalist in Washington. He started putting it out there. And when he started putting it out there, it started to gaining momentum. And then after it gained momentum, then President Kennedy wanted to become involved. And when Kennedy wanted to become involved, then the NAACP and the Urban League wanted to become involved because the big guy was involved.
So the NAACP and later on the Urban League followed suit after President Kennedy?
After they knew that he was going to give his amen to it. But the man who was the brain behind it was A. Philip Randolph, L. Joseph Overton, and a man that we like to forget, but we cannot forget. His name, he went to school at Hunter College. He was a social worker, and he was gay.
So talk to us about this. When you look at the March on Washington, what are your thoughts? Because the only thing that seems to emanate out of the March on Washington on many fronts is just the Dr. King speech, I Have a Dream, which I've often told people before was not the first time that he said, I have a dream.
It's the second
time he had said, I had a dream, because the first time he gave his I Have a Dream speech was in Detroit, Michigan, when he spoke with the Reverend C.L. Franklin, and that's where Aretha Franklin had the first opportunity to hear Dr. King speak. But unfortunately, history does not dictate or tell us exactly the truth about it, because his I Have a Dream speech was initially given in Detroit.
Yes. Now, C.L. Franklin, preacher, when I met him, his daughter, Aretha Franklin, was the pianist in his church. Now, the speech was given there, but the one thing that we can be thankful to God for, and that is the television set. Because once that television set started to propelling around the world what was going on in America, that put America on the spot. Because now people can see. The same thing happened in Egypt. I want to digress a little bit. The same thing happened in Egypt when people used these cell phones and they could text each other back and forth what was going on in the world. You can't hide that. The same thing happened in Iraq when soldiers could pick up their phones and people can talk back and forth across the world. So technology has helped the struggle of African Americans.
Unbelievable. Well, it is unbelievable to a certain extent, but very believable. We want to continue our conversation with Professor Ed Colvert, schooling us on the history of the civil rights movement, getting some names in there that people aren't so familiar about. And when we come back, we'll continue more of that with Professor Colvert when we return.
Maybe he's really focused.
Maybe he likes spinning the wheels.
Maybe he just loves trucks.
Preoccupation with objects is one early sign of autism. Learn the others today.
The smallest moments can have the biggest impact on a child's life. Take time to be a dad today.
Being a dad can be tough.
No. What do you mean she's not coming?
When's the fairy princess coming?
Any minute now.
But when you're willing to do anything...
It is I, Grooves Zinkelpel. Yeah. Okay, time for cake.
It's always worth it.
I know it's really you, Drew. I'm just pretending for the other kids.
The smallest moments can have the biggest impact on a child's life. Take time to be a dad today. Call 877-4DAD-411 or visit fatherhood.gov.
Separate raw meats from other foods by using different cutting boards. 3,000 Americans will die from food poisoning this year. Keep your family safer. Check your steps at foodsafety.gov.
You wouldn't let money just blow out of your house. So when your AC or heater is on, make sure the doors, windows, and fireplace flue are shut tight. If you're headed out, turn down the AC or lower the heat by 10 degrees. And always keep your water heater set at 120. A little bit of common sense goes a long way. Get more great tips at energysaver.gov.
Back with our conversation with Professor Ed Covert, who's been sharing with us a little bit about civil rights, the struggle, and giving us some names that have been associated with the civil rights struggle that we don't commonly hear. And right now we want to shift our focus to talk about civil rights and inequality. Because when we look at civil rights, well, the first rights that were actually fought for were human rights. The second rights, the civil rights movement, and the fact that inequality exists. Talk to us about the inequality that still exists, even though the civil rights movement, in many ways, is now over.
Well, civil rights as it used to be is over, but inequality is raising its insidious head. For instance, Occupy Wall Street. Occupy Wall Street was not about welfare recipients or WIC mothers. Occupy Wall Street was about people who did the right thing, who have bachelor's, master's, PhDs, and student loans that can't find jobs, while American jobs are being shipped to Canada via Apple. In fact, when President Obama met with Steve Jobs told President Obama, we cannot find the technicians here in America to do what we need to do, so we send it to China. That's not true. Every year, a new set of young Americans technicians are coming out of college. What he didn't say was the fact that over there, we can pay them a pittance of what we pay an American worker, and therefore we can make more money by dealing with that multinational corporation situation. A man who will support this is Dr. Brzezinski from Columbia University, who has been writing about globalization. And not only about globalization in terms of heating and stuff, but he's talking about economic globalizations where the United States, if it is not careful, will be a second and third rate world power when you compare them to people like China.
But we already are a second and third in the world. When you talk about
I'm talking
science,
about in terms of economics.
Right, but yeah, when you look at where we are right now in science and math and things of that nature, one would soon think that economically we're already there. We just haven't publicized it yet.
Well, I'd have to agree with that. Having been an educator, this will be my 60th year as a teacher.
60 years as a teacher.
60 years as a teacher.
Congratulations.
And I've seen it all. When I went into the Board of Ed, you could have no speech impediment. They ask you questions like, is there any insanity in your family? Not that we'd admit. Do you engage in any unusual sexual activity? Which was a nebulous question because what you call usual is unusual for me. All kinds of questions to weed people out. In this city, I never had a Latino teacher or a black teacher, and I went to the public schools in this city.
What did that do for you, given the fact that you did not have that there? Because we know now what the value is of having someone who looks like you or sounds like you in the classroom.
Well, what it did, I was taught to compete. I'm very competitive. I will work 24/7 to beat you. Even today, I don't like to come in second best. When I was playing ball, if we lost a game, I was not fit to talk to until Wednesday night. I'd be so keyed up and so angry if I had done something or if our team had lost. We need to develop a competitive spirit, and I tell my students in this college, you must learn to compete on a world stage. You're just not competing with people in America anymore. You're competing on the world stage with people who have been taught 2 and 3 languages. Most of us only speak 1 language. Most people who come from other countries, take Africa for instance, most people in Africa speak English, French, and 2 or 3 dialects. The only thing we teach our students is English. In the higher grades, you may learn Spanish 1 and 2, which we struggle through Spanish 2, but that's it. You don't have to take any more languages unless you're going on to the doctoral level. Then you must be conversant and be able to translate documents in 2 other languages. But our education is not geared to make our children winners. Our educational system is geared to fit our people into certain cubbies, and if you do not fit into that cubby, you can't work. For instance, I ask people, what do you think my major was in college? No one has been able to guess what my major was in college.
What was your major? Engineer?
Certainly not.
Journalism?
No.
What was it?
Classical music.
Amazing. And you end up being an educator.
I end up doing this. Why? I studied with one of the greatest trumpet players that the Philharmonic ever had. His name was James Smith. He was my teacher. He lived up on the Grand Concourse. But they didn't tell me that they did not hire black men in symphonic orchestras. There was only one. He was a French horn player named Watkins. So here I am, a classically trained musician that can go down in the music department of Lehman and feel just as much at home as I feel up in African American studies with no job. So I end up with Lloyd Price and Buddy Johnson and doing the Chitlin Circle. And I'm sitting up there saying, what am I doing here? You see, they give you the training, but they don't give you the opportunity to use what you have been trained to do. When I came along, they said, you need to get a bachelor's degree, and then you'll be able to work. So you went and got a bachelor's degree. Then you said, well, you need a master's to solidify your position. So you went and got a master's to solidify your position, and then they tell you you're overqualified. So that even today, you have people that's got doctorates that dummy down the doctorate with a glorified bachelor's just to find a job.
And I know there are people out there right now who are struggling, because I've met a couple who've actually have PhDs.
Exactly.
who are still struggling. What does it say for us as a people? Because this is a challenge that I'm finding upstate New York. There are a lot of people, particularly African Americans, Latinos, who were a part of the movement that worked in factories and jobs, who had factory jobs, I should say, and that was their bread and butter. That's what they've been accustomed to. But now with the transference of these factory jobs going overseas, now you've got a group of people who have a skill set who have nothing there, because you've got technology now, and you've got the new IT to be the new skill set, and they're not equipped to handle the jobs that are coming in, thence leaving them unemployed.
One of the big industries in upstate New York was Eastman Kodak. They're gone. A profession used to be photographer. I can take as good a picture with my iPhone as a photographer can take. And in 2 minutes, I can send it to you. That killed that industry. What I see is that we are training people to do things that once they are trained to do a certain job, that job does not exist. For instance, you have some young people here. If they're under 25, the job that they hold when they retire does not exist today. Case in point, I have seen where there's no need for this campus. Why do you need all this campus when you can do whatever you need to do over the internet? I teach 2 classes. I've been on the campus 1 time. I've never seen the students. They've never seen me except to Skype. They send in their work. I do that. Why you need all this? The University of Phoenix is growing by leaps and bounds, which means that all this as we know it, there's no need for it. In a few weeks, the Council for the United Negro College Fund is coming here to New York for a conference. 2 years ago, I met with some of the presidents, and they were talking about raising money to build libraries. And I told them, that's good, but instead of building libraries, what you ought to be building are information centers. One fellow, he got so, oh, that's ridiculous. I said, you sound like a modern-day Luddite. And first of all, I had to explain to him what a Luddite was, because he hadn't read E.P. Thompson's book, The English Working Class. But after I explained it to him, oh, but you're always going to need, you don't need that anymore. I can take my iPhone and go in any library in the world and read what's in that library. So why are you going to spend millions of dollars to do this when you could spend money to bring American students into the 21st century? If you graduated from college 30 years ago, your education today is not worth anything. Many people are not computer literate. They don't know about Blackboard and CUNY Portal or all of this stuff.
Let me ask the question. How, given now, particularly in the minority community, how do we catch up to where we need to be? Because a lot of us can admit that, you know, technically our skill set is not where it should be. So how do we advance the ball to become relevant in today's society?
You go back to school. School is free. The poorer you are today, the better off you are. I sit on boards of colleges where we are crying for black students. We can't find them because they're not trained in the skill set that is needed to put them in these colleges. I sit on the board of the College of Podiatric Medicine. A good podiatrist, $250,000, between $200,000, $250,000. But you have to have that training, and then you go to the college, you graduate, you pass your state boards, then you can go into making that kind of money. We don't want to go into that. It takes too long. We have been sold a lie. There's a book. The book is entitled The Way Schools Work. And in that book, entitled The Way Schools Work, it clearly explains that students in a certain socioeconomic group, you do not train them to be CEOs or to lead organizations because they'll never do that. You train them to do something that the society needs, and therefore they will always have a job. W.E.B. Du Bois and Garvey, if they could have gotten together, they had it together, but separately they were on different planets. Garvey talked about working, being able to use these. Du Bois talked about the talented tenth. But what people do not realize is that everywhere Du Bois taught, he surrounded himself with a cadre of black intellectuals that he taught. Not everybody, but those who had a thirst for knowledge. There's something I want to put in. We mentioned the civil rights movement. Well, there was a man named Cleveland Robinson who was head of D.C. District Council 65. Cleveland Robinson had a man working for him whose name was John G. Jackson. He is a bookbinder. John G. Jackson wrote the Bible for African civilization. I use his book today. Nobody's ever heard of John G. Jackson. He was a professor emeritus at City College.
And the moral of the story is you got to get out there.
You got to get out there.
And take advantage of the resources that are out there.
You got to.
And don't just trust the limited ones that are in front of you.
You got to do and check things out for yourself, because the scripture says all men are liars. So you got to go and you've got to check it out for yourself. That's why the doctoral degree is a research degree. That's why you have so many people with doctoral degrees, but they never go anyplace because they know how to dot the I's and cross the T's, but they don't have this to have the creativity to go out and find something that is unique that they can write about.
Professor Ed Covert, as always, our guest here on Perspectives, dropping knowledge. And thank you for spending a half hour bringing us up to the new school and taking us back to the old school. Thank you so much, Professor Ed Covert, being with us.
I hope you don't get me lynched by telling you about the NAACP and the Urban League, but it's the truth.
It's the truth.
It's right there in the book.
That's it. I want you to stay with us here on Perspectives as we continue to bring you more